So hello, I'm John. I'm in Leicester Square, basically showing what happens to animals. These are standard farming practices and what happens to individual animals. I'm here because I've suffered a lot in my life, and I don't want to cause this to other animals that feel pain, that want to live, that have families, that have emotions. This is basically a dairy calf. So the mother is forcibly impregnated, she's held down and forcibly impregnated, and then her calf is separated from her at a few days old. They call after each other, and then if they're male, like this calf here, they're usually killed, as is shown here. Same with male chicks in the egg industry, they're usually suffocated in plastic bags or ground up alive. And most people here are against these things. Most people here either don't know what's happened or they haven't seen it. Because these battery farms, these slaughterhouses, just these industries don't want us to see what happens. Because most people are against animal abuse and most people don't want to cause this. And really, do you think you can be against animal abuse and still paying for it? Most people I speak to don't. Most people wouldn't harm an animal themselves. In fact, if they saw an animal being harmed, they'd actually try and stop it. But we grew up in a society where this is normal. But it doesn't make it right, because when we make a choice, our choice have consequences, and these are the victims. So here's an example, a cow being killed. And all these animals are being exploited. They often suffer mutilations, like their balls, their tails, their beaks being chopped off, and then they will be killed. And to me, there's no humane way of killing an animal that doesn't want to die. And even then, many of them suffer, they're not stunned or not stunned properly. And to me, I can be just as healthy without causing this. Like, the NHS says you can be just as healthy on a plant-based diet. There's no need for me to cause this. And to be fair, I did used to consume all these products. But then I thought, what would, if I was next in line to be slaughtered, how would I feel and how soon would I want someone to stop it? So then I realised I had to stop. To me, it wasn't okay doing it just on 1 day or 2 days, because if something's wrong, if I was kicking a dog every day, I wouldn't be okay just doing it on a Monday or a Wednesday. So I had to try and change my actions to align with my values. And that's what all I'm asking people is, if they think this is wrong, then really you can't say this is wrong and still be buying it. That's hypocritical. So just asking them to really change their actions and support things like Challenge 22, where you can get free nutritional advice. This is from Dominion, which basically shows standard farming practice. And there's the best feature over here if you don't want to see footage but want to find out what happens. And yeah, these animals are individuals. If we wouldn't want this happening to us, it's not right to happen to the individual. And some people would justify it by saying animals are less intelligent. But if humans were less intelligent, if humans maybe were in a vegetative state or had learning disabilities, we wouldn't say it was right to abuse humans. So really, intelligence is not a justification for abuse. There is no justification for it. It's just, we have a choice whether we want to cause it. The average person on an omnivore diet causes roughly 200 animals to suffer and die. And look at these, are how they're transported. It could be sheep, pigs. Pigs are gassed to death. Even the RSPCA says that's humane. There's nothing humane about this. Chickens are bred to grow so fast, they often struggle to walk and stand. And they're all babies, they're a few months old, usually when they're killed. So, these are innocent creatures which have done nothing wrong, and yet because of us, because of our choices, they are suffering miserable lives. They must be desperate to get out of there, constantly suffering, depressed, anxious. Anyone, I myself have mental health difficulties. I would hate to call, I can't even begin to think of how depressed and anxious and miserable these animals are as a result of, the choices I used to make. But the brilliant thing is now I can have the same products that I used to have, but plant-based versions. A lot of the seasoning of meat, a lot of the taste of meat comes from the seasoning, and I can have plant-based meat, plant-based milk instead of milk. There's 7 different types of plant-based milk. And plus, I can have all the different vegetable-based dishes that I've learned. But this is how some of farmers, I know all farmers don't do this. The problem is if you see this animal, you can see the numbers on it. If you see them as a number instead of an individual, that's when you start to discriminating, oppressing and abusing them. And these are like standard practices of pigs. They're in farrowing crates. You know, they often can't move very much and they sometimes roll onto the piglets and crush them. I mean, these piglets are just so young, so innocent, and they suffer horribly. Like, pigs are just as intelligent as dogs, in fact more intelligent than dogs. They can communicate, they can follow, I mean not they should follow commands, but they can do everything like a dog would to us. We could have had these as pets. You know, and imagine if this was your pet dog, your pet puppy. Well, you wouldn't do this to an animal. I'm sure most people wouldn't harm an animal themselves, wouldn't kill an animal. But is it any different if you're paying for this to happen to an animal? Because to the individual, they're losing their life and they're being harmed either way, whether you pay someone to do it, if you do it yourself, or you do it yourself. So if you wouldn't do it yourself, you know, please don't do it to these poor innocent animals. I mean, these are runts. You can see they get their teeth pulled out without anaesthetic, tails chopped off without anaesthetic. You know, even chickens get their beaks cut off without anaesthetic. You know, this is so, it doesn't need to happen, it's so unnecessary. And it's going to show later, like, yeah, they're just discarded as if they're just products. See how they're, imagine if you're in those conditions, how would you feel? You know, it must be, many of these animals will die in like the summer conditions from overheating. Thousands of chickens die from overheating, from these cramped conditions. And yeah, so I'm just basically talking to people in the public, appealing to people's good nature, because most people are decent people, most people care about animals, most people wouldn't harm these animals themselves, but we have this cognitive dissonance. We've raised in a society where this is normal. You know, I was doing it for 20 years, so I get people that have been doing it. I'm not saying these people are bad people, but I'm saying if you know now what happens, then it's bad to carry on doing it. If you know what happens to the victims, it doesn't sit with most people's values. You know, this is pigs being gassed to death. You know, there's nothing humane about this. This is supposedly by the RSPCA a humane way to kill an animal. And the humane thing is a lie. You know, free range is really a lot, although there are certain standards, it's still a lie, because these animals still, you have to get 10,000 in a shed. The smaller ones and the lower in the pecking order often won't be able to get outside because they'll be bullied by the other ones. And it's not a choice between going from, you know, battery farm to free range. Our choice is whether we want to cause the suffering or not cause it. And we have that choice. And we've got to think, if we were the victim, how soon would we want someone to stop doing this to the animal? So yeah, please watch Dominion, please. You know, at the very least, if you're having these products, you should see what happens to the animals that you're eating and what you're causing. Because I'm sure most people wouldn't want to cause this to an animal. So please just find out for yourself, educate yourself, and don't just make the choices that you want. Make your own choice rather than just what society tells you, because your choices have a victim.